that.
There you go.
Good evening. I'd like to call it to order open space land, farmland acquisition, oh man, life. Open space land acquisition, farmland preservation subcommittee, Tuesday, June 24th, 2025, 6 p.m. Any public comment? Nobody's in the public, nobody's on Zoom. We're going to have to table the minutes from the May 14th since Councilor Emanuel's not here. And Councilor Savini wasn't at the last meeting. We're going to move to discussion of community gardens, Rock Hill Community Farm, community gardens.
All right, so we've, as you know, we are not doing the gardens where we were initially planning earlier this year. We've moved it east. We still have Dave's original plan showing 10 by 10s, 10 by 20s, and 20 by 20s. We're talking about just making that a little more consistent on size. I'm not sure what your feeling is. Most communities have one size, some have two, but we had 3 and 4 last time. So that was one item. And then we had a well specialist out. So the water is clean in the drilled well. We're not even talking about the hand dug well. We cannot find any data between us and the health department regarding the drilled well. We don't know when it was drilled. We don't know the yield, gallons per minute. We don't know how deep it is. We got nothing. As I said, we had the specialist out. He's a well driller, and so to use the well, we need a couple items. We need electricity, a pump, and then we need to connect it to the barn, and then I'll get into something afterwards. And just that alone is $10,000 to $15,000 just for that work estimate. To use the well, it's recommended not to put taps out where people can just open them if it's on a well, to open and just and use, because sometimes they're left on, and then you can either drain the well or burn out the pump, or both. So it's, he recommended in his experience that you would have a secondary tank, fill it once a day or something. When it's out, sorry. That was his recommendation. And then there's also some regulations regarding wells. It's if you're gonna have greater than 25 people using it, now you're called, what is it here called? Something about non-transient. Yeah, let's see. So then you'll need a certificate of public convenience and necessity. So that's something with deep regarding the well. Some things that have been done in the past, they'll post it as it's not potable. It's for hand washing and toilet use only, and watering the gardens. And with that certificate, it's annual testing, and they're estimating to get all that done, into the building and all the other stuff. It's another $35,000 to $40,000 for the well. We looked at the MDC. We will need to reach out to our MDC rep to see if there's some kind of waiver, because if you base it on frontage, just our assessment to tie into MDC, this isn't installation, is about $350,000, just the assessment. So can we get that waived? And then if we bring in a line, it's still going to be the construction costs. We're still going to need the electricity, that kind of thing. So it's probably going to be $15,000 anyways. So just to get the water on the site, unless you put a hand pump.
Sounds like people will have to bring their own water
Yeah.
for a while.
Does, yeah, for the time
Very
being.
expensive venture.
Either way, it's pretty expensive. And then if a well go dry,
Yeah,
start
and
this all over again.
And as I said, we have no data on this well. We do not know how deep it is. We don't know, what it's pumping at, what rate. So we're still looking, and the health department's still looking to see if they have any records. I think theirs is by year, so they're asking what year it was done, and we don't know that either.
Right. Now, did they test for arsenic and all those?
It just came
contaminants
back
in it?
as it's clean to use.
Okay.
So
That's
Yeah,
good.
we didn't get a
Good.
detailed report.
Anybody else got questions about the well?
Yeah, you had mentioned a few things about if more than 25 people are going to use it. I mean, I could see if that makes sense where a neighborhood's going to the well to get their water for drinking, but if we're talking for, gray water, perhaps, I don't know if it would get worked, if it could get worked into servicing the eventual bathroom. I mean, does any of that stuff get waived if it's not people coming to, like fill up their water jugs to drink?
Well, this is what, if we're gonna use it as an educational component, and you bring a classroom of kids, all of a sudden you have 25 people. So that's where that number kicks in.
But even if they're not
Not so
using it as
much
drinking
the
water?
gardens, but,
But even if they're not using it as drinking water?
yeah, it's still considered basically like a community thing.
I don't have a question, I'm good.
You guys?
I'm good.
That's a problem. We'll have
It's a
to
money
deal with that
problem.
as it goes, yeah. But we do have an MDC rep, like you said, and
We do.
maybe, do you
So,
know if,
I think we'd have to reach out through the manager to speak with them about taking it to the MDC.
do we know if other areas in town they've waived for
I do
town
not know.
stuff? Or
I do not know. My experience, like when we did this streetscape out here, we had a fire hydrant to move, and it was like $50,000 they wanted.
Okay.
And we were able to get that waived with our previous commissioner
Okay,
back in 2009.
Doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's hopefully, and do we have water and sewer right out there on those roads? I don't know if it's there.
We have, damn, I forgot to look. One is out there, one's not. I think there's water that runs by, but we don't have sewer, I'm pretty sure, is what it is.
One of them, okay. That's something we could look at too.
So,
Thanks.
So rain buckets it is.
I'm sorry, I'm a ball of good news.
Well, but you were saying also that in terms of the farmers that are using the site, you don't have other irrigation.
No,
So it doesn't really change the plan for how we were using it. We have other parks in town that don't have bathrooms with flushing toilets. So this is just exploring if that existing amenity could be used, which sounds like perhaps not, but it doesn't change our plan for the overall site.
correct, yeah. Would have been nice, but we
Yeah.
still can use it.
I'm sure, down the road, things change, we can do it. It's just, right now, it's very expensive.
Well, that 3 to 350 is very expensive,
Yeah.
right?
That's
Yeah,
all.
and
That's a big
that's
chunk
first
if we
step.
back
Can
out
we have
there.
that waived? Now it's, the construction costs, depending on which road we're coming in off of, possibly a state permit and digging up a state road, so, yeah.
Do we know if they're planning to service that road in any schedule? Like if the state's doing work there and they take,
That
does
was-
that give us the opportunity
Yeah,
to?
that was done, I want to say in 2012, 11, 12, somewhere in there.
Because if they redo the road, I don't know
Yeah.
if it gives us the opportunity to maybe.
It was in the early 2010s. I have it in my office when they've done all the roads, but I want to say it was 12. So it's probably a couple years out for that.
Just touching base on the community gardens, did Dave do a design of the area that we're thinking, or not yet?
I think we handed this out last time. I don't have anything to put up on screen, but I can pass these around for you. There you go, Chris. And again, this is just a sketch. We can, depending on what we decide on sizes, I mean, right now it's 10 by 10s, 10 by 20s. I'm thinking maybe we go 15 by 15 and just call it a day, and then you can
Yeah, I think it'd be easier.
get rid of
if
the
we just
20s,
had-
get rid of the 10s, and then you go
Yeah.
15 by 15, here you go.
I think
And it- 'cause-
that survey, most of them wanted a smaller
Smaller.
size, not tiny, but not the large ones.
Right, and a lot of the research we've done says for an average family, anywhere between 100 and 300 square feet, that's kind of a big range, so that's anywhere from a 10 to a 10 by 10 to 10 by 30. So if you go 15 by 15, you're kind of right in the middle, 225.
I like that idea.
So that would affect this layout that he has.
Yeah, you can modify it,
Yeah.
obviously. What do you guys think from the committee part? Just go with one standard size?
Well, you know what, I'm still sticking with getting a survey out there and finding out what the community
We
wants.
did one.
We did.
We
We
did.
did.
We did.
We have that.
UConn students did it.
We had about 60 responses in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had that done.
More than that even, yeah. I thought we had like
Oh.
200.
As I said, in
Because I think there's gonna be a bigger call for raised beds.
I don't know.
We got 5 down here, and they're 4 by
Yeah.
4. I'm thinking there's probably gonna be a bigger demand than that.
And I guess you got to decide what's a raised bed. To me, a raised bed is you could pull up and sit on a chair, and it's going to be high like this.
Right.
That's just about all the communities we've looked at. They have basically none.
Okay.
A lot of communities have raised beds, and they're more like those things that you see at Farmer Supply, metal containers that sit. So the top is about 12 inches off the ground, so you're bending over, but not as far. That's what they're using as raised beds. So, and most of the communities we've surveyed also have one size. I think one town had 2 sizes, and that was big, 20 by 20 or 50 by 50.
And most communities don't have raised beds.
No. I mean, it might be coming as we go along, if I resurvey them again next year, it could be different, what they're planning.
This is really an experiment, right?
Yeah.
We'll learn after our first year, you'll know if you need something more, or even during the season, there may be a need for increasing the number of beds or the size or
Right.
number of raised beds. So, I think starting out with that, 15 by 15, whatever, that
Yeah.
one size,
Yeah.
and maybe a handful of raised beds, and if we get a big onslaught of requests for raised beds, we know. we
Next
need to
year,
adjust.
or the following year, right.
Yeah, I talked to a couple towns for a good amount of time regarding just their operations, their sizes, how they prep the fields and all that. So, I mean, we're leaving space. The other towns just go in there and plow it all and stake them out, and they butt them one against the other basically, and you had like a 4 square, and then a gap. But it's just the whole thing's plowed. They don't leave grass rows. It's just too hard for them to do the work.
Plus, we have the funding issue about the raised beds. I think if we get
Yep.
some funding for a certain number, that's what we build. And then if we need more, that farmland, the Friends of the Farm, maybe they could come up with further monies or
Yeah.
to start with it.
And as I said, there's 2 different raised bed possibilities. There's the ones that are, stick up out of the ground. They're just, a metal thing, and you're bending over, and it's a foot off the ground versus the 36 inches off the ground. So, and again, this isn't going to be the most, it's not going to be the easiest place to get with, say, a wheelchair. That would have to be somewhere else. Everything out here, there's nothing. We have a wheelchair, we have a spot at the farm, and it's paved, but then when you get down to the fields, it's a field. So,
So is the goal of a raised bed for handicap? What is the goal of a raised bed? I have one in my backyard. Like,
just enough
I
to
don't
bend
think I'd
over
use
as far, I guess.
down at the
A little
farm.
easier.
Well, it also gives you, depending on your purpose, but you could also, if you have your raised bed, you have more control over the soil that's in your container versus
Right.
what might just be in the ground. And
So I guess what I'm getting at, and I don't know, Lisa, I don't want to, but why wouldn't I do a raised bed at my house? We're talking raised bed for apartment.
Yeah.
People don't have their own land.
Yeah,
would-
this-
would prefer. Yeah, that it is. I feel better about my soil for sure. That is the one benefit I see. Yeah. So
yeah, if you,
maybe there would be a good reason to have a raised bed, but I'd say we get in the first year and then go
Right.
as we
We'll get what we
just because of
start,
funding too.
right, start with what we can and
We could get
expand
yelled at
from.
for not spending $400 on a raised bed, though.
Yeah, I think I mentioned last meeting, I coincidentally got a magazine I get, and they had plans for raised beds, and they were much smaller than what we were showing. They're like 2 feet by 6 feet, and everything was cedar, and you price it out, and it's, we were looking at something much bigger than that, like 4 by 10. So, for the
It's a
raised bed.
big raised bed, 4
Yeah.
by 10. How do you get in
That's
the
too
middle?
big.
Well, that's the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So, we would have to scale that back, but still, it's
Yeah.
$300-400 of lumber just for one. I guess the legs you could go with non-cedar, but everything else, with soils touching, you want is, you don't want pressure treated there, that's for sure.
I like the 10 by 20, by the way, just for the record.
Okay.
But I could be talked in either way.
Yeah. That's similar in size to 15 by 15 square footage
It
wise.
is 200 versus 225,
Yeah,
right? So, I mean, I'm just thinking your rows are gonna, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a farmer.
Yeah, neither am I. I'm not a gardener, so I can't answer this,
Yeah, I
you know,
can't
what you
either.
need for space.
I see mostly rectangular beds, I
Yeah,
guess is my
yes, I
point.
do.
Yeah, you're right.
I've seen
Instead of
both,
a
actually.
Square, yeah.
Yeah,
Some towns have square, some towns have
but even
rectangular.
general gardens.
Layout.
Yeah,
Yeah, the layout of it.
but it doesn't matter. I mean, a couple extra 10 by 20s if we do it, and they could buy 2 10 by 20s anyways if they wanted something big. Or
True.
rent 2
Yes, yeah.
10 by 20s.
I just think we should come up with what we want to do tonight so that Dave Plumberg could go back and design it again for our next meeting.
I mean, design, that's the quickest part of the whole thing.
Beds.
Okay.
I found a company that's willing to do the raised beds for us.
That's beautiful.
For free?
Really?
Really?
Did they give us
And that's
a
what we-
limit or a number that they would
Look
do?
at everything for you.
No, but a number, 10, how many would they do?
I
you
didn't
know?
give them a number.
Okay.
They didn't come back with a number, but yeah, they do it all the time. They do
Okay,
volunteering stuff all the time, and
nice. That's a plus.
there we go.
Maybe we should come up with a number so that we could put it on a plan, just for our sake, for this upcoming one.
I think on the other side, we're showing 10
Oh,
originally.
we had 10, yeah, the last time we did
Yeah.
it.
Let's bump it up to 12.
You're free.
I mean,
Did they give you a size on them? Did they give you dimensions on them?
No, I just kind of threw it out there
Okay.
to somebody I know that works for a construction company.
Yeah.
And he says they do volunteer work all the time, and just for us to give them the numbers of what they need and what we need, and they'll
Okay.
go to his boss and work it
So,
out.
so they're stick-built, for lack of a, we can say what size we'd prefer, like
yeah.
3 by 6 or 3 by 8 or whatever.
Yep.
For
Good.
I wouldn't put the raised beds at the front. What if you ever had to get in there? You'd have to move the raised beds.
Put them on wheels,
You
right?
might want to put them maybe in a different location,
Yeah.
Right.
you know?
Why can't we put them on wheels and we just move them around?
It's gonna
That
be a
sounds
pretty big
substantially
wheel.
more
pretty heavy.
work.
Yeah, it's heavy.
You're gonna need wheels that, you
tough.
don't want solid wheels, you're gonna want something pneumatic tires and probably like that to
that's a
roll
lot.
around over that kind of ground.
That's heavy.
Yeah, and it's gonna be heavy.
What's the direction that the committee needs to provide? Like, are we approving the actual layout of what we see on the map, or is it just conceptual? Because I'm sure we have it in our heads, but if you got down there, you know, maybe the part of the ground needs to be like slightly adjusted. So what are we actually looking to accomplish as part of this meeting tonight in terms of
I
layout?
think you just decide the size of the bed
Yeah,
and maybe the number of raised beds, and then let Dave Palmberg, he's a land surveyor, by the way, so he can lay this thing out professionally for the next meeting.
Perfect. So what do we want to do for the number of the beds and the size? Lisa
It
said
sounds like you could
12.
have like, if you talk, this whole, we got one set of 12 20 by 20s. If we're gonna cut that down, that would make that 24.
I can offer this up. I can have them draw it up 15 by 15, and I can have them draw something up 10 by 20s.
Okay,
I'll give you two options.
Yeah,
let's do that.
and then add raised beds maybe. You see where the 12 10 by 10s are? On this current schematic?
Yeah.
Maybe we put the raised beds all along there.
That's a good idea.
So
I think we
still
just put 'em
have
to the-
access everywhere.
Put to the outskirts, maybe around the perimeter kind of thing.
The undulation of the earth would matter a little bit for balance purposes, but
I think the plan I got in the magazine was for 2 by 8, 2 by 6, 2 by 8. I think 2 by 8 would probably be
yeah.
manageable.
How far
Right.
away do
Or
vegetables
3.
have to
2 by
be?
8. 2 foot by 8 foot. raised
12
bed.
inches or so,
So
depending
you
what
might
they
be
are,
two
some are
and a
even
half then, right?
further, 18 inches.
So if you want to have 2 rows, maybe you need 3 feet.
Right, 3 feet.
Like tomatoes, you want 3 feet.
Yeah.
Right, so the
And
point
if
is.
you're gonna stake them,
right.
I would still, peppers, you need 18 inches, eggplant, you need at least 18 inches.
So if you're 36 wide, then at least you
Right.
can have 2 rows,
Right.
that's my point.
Yep.
So
3 feet
I'd say 3
by,
feet
See if they can do something like
by
that.
8, or what?
by 8.
Yeah, by 8,
I think that gives,
3 by 8.
because if you're 2, you get tight, you know? I have
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I have a 2 and I can only put, there's no 2 rows, it's just 1 row.
Yeah. 3 by 8, how many? 12 of them we'll shoot
Yeah.
for?
Yeah,
That looks good.
yeah.
Yeah.
That'll make me happy. And if Lisa Gilbert's happy, everybody's happy.
Oh,
I feel
boy.
good, I feel better now.
So that's a good start, and thank you, Mrs. Clemens. Maybe we'll get a little
Say we end on a
more
good note.
info. 3 by 12, 12 of them.
3 by 12.
Sorry
three-
about
oh,
that.
they're
3 by 8.
3 by
sorry.
8.
3 by 8,
12, the number 12 of them.
Okay.
See if they
Of course, it'd have to
do
be,
that.
something that you can put soil in, not like a cedar or something like that.
I guess we're gonna need to know how high we want them to for the
I will
material wise.
scan that plan and get it to all of you, I guess.
Well,
I
actually,
have an
that's a good
idea, but they'll have to
question.
modify it.
How deep do you need?
That's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
no,
that's-
no, I'm asking you and Lisa, how deep do you need, like on a tomato plant? Like, how many inches of soil? 12?
What's yours?
All of that,
Yeah,
Okay.
all of that.
So that's the depth of the bed. not-
What's
not the
your bed?
limbs.
How deep?
I'd say it's 12 to
picture?
14,
Okay.
yeah.
yeah.
Making my picture on.
Is 12 enough?
It's 12 enough, I guess.
No,
yeah.
that's probably not.
And again, I don't go all the way to the top, so I think I'm about 16, and I got like 2 inches from the top, so I'm using 14 inches.
Okay.
I
What
don't
do
know
you
if they're
think
gonna
the
grow.
depth of them, Lisa? You got an idea?
You wanna go 3 feet?
That's what I was thinking, 3 feet.
Pictures,
Yeah.
is that what they're thinking on the size and picture?
Are we envisioning that these are like a box that's closed in at the bottom? Or is it just the frame around it? Because if it's just the frame, then the roots
Right.
could still go down, right?
Right. That's what I would think.
We wanna have this so that, like, if somebody from the town needs to get over there with a set of forks and just kinda move them around, we can do that,
Then you gotta have a bottom for that.
basically.
Yeah.
Or are these gonna be like a permanent?
I think they're better permanent, the roots can go into the earth if
I
you
could
have
do that
to.
too, yeah.
Well, that's interesting, okay. Yeah, mine has a bottom.
Does, okay.
Yeah, I have one, but I just put like hardware cloth in the bottom of it, but that was, depends on whatever you're trying to grow in there. You're not
Well,
gonna
see
grow
what-
carrots in it.
Steve, you got some designs, maybe send them out to us too, we can look at them.
I do have some, they're anywhere from, 2 foot by 8 foot, 2 by 6 foot. They're about 30 inches high, 15 inches deep. So like you said, 16.
Yeah, but I think that's too
Yeah,
shallow.
so. I actually
Let's
have one
do
that's kind of
3
neat,
feet
but
deep.
I don't think it's what you want. They made a frame and they put 5-gallon buckets. So every
Yeah.
plant has its own 5-gallon bucket.
No, we don't wanna do that.
That looks kind
The
of
other-
cheesy.
The other part of that is that if we're making the raised beds, we still have to fill it. So do we have the
Correct.
soil to fill it on site, or are we getting, because every time we add to the depth, we're adding to that
So
cost.
True.
we did test the
Yeah,
the organics, just the leaves mixed with nothing. It came back clean, so we can use that.
So
The compost. Our compost that we have that we make out of our leaves we pick up every year.
And we would mix that with other soil, or you're just putting straight compost
I
in
don't
the
know.
beds?
I'm not a gardener,
Needs
so I
some
don't
type
know
of
what you do. You
soil,
got to
too.
amend it, yeah. So
Yeah, needs some
we have to
soil.
find something to amend it with. That we might have to obtain
Okay.
or mix with what's out there. Maybe
Yeah.
if we just put it on top, turn it all in together.
Maybe,
These
Then-
raised beds are gonna have 3 feet of soil in them?
yeah. Yeah,
How many are we gonna have, 12?
It's a lot.
No, I can't do 3 feet. It's gonna have to be more like 18 inches tops.
Yeah. I
It'll
I
probably
thought maybe
it'll probably
that
collapse
people would
if too
bring their
much.
own soil
Oh,
to
there's
some
no bottom,
extent.
right?
no
there's
bottom,
No,
No.
they're talking about something different.
no bottoms.
Just like a-
So then the roots can go into the earth if they need to.
So we're not talking the ones that are, so we're talking a raised bed, because they all have bottoms. We're talking the frames that you put on the ground now.
Yeah, and then you
Those
fill
you
it up
can-
with soil, I'm thinking that's a
Well,
raised
she was
bed.
talking raised beds, because she
She's
was
talking raised beds
Well, I think they're describing
I
different
was
types of
thinking
the
they were
same
off the
thing.
ground.
with a
off the
bottom.
ground.
Yeah.
You need a bottom on those.
Yeah, because
And that can only be X deep, because otherwise it's the weight
Yeah, 'cause
between
we had talked
the
Correct.
soil, the water in the soil.
underneath and building them up last time.
All right, let's,
Because those metal ones, you can get those 2x9s, I think they were at Tractor Supply for like most of them are expensive, but they had one in the spring for like $50, 2 foot by 9, and then you set it there.
all right, let's regroup here then.
If it's off the ground, is it gonna dry out quicker? I mean, is that,
Probably.
so people would need to water more too?
Yeah, but if it's a good size of 3x8,
Still hold.
that's,
I was gonna say,
But
because
how's the
it's,
depth? That's where, we got 3x8s, but what's the depth of it?
if we went 3 feet,
Well, that's what I'm
I-
saying, but
I-
they're
I
saying.
do
it wouldn't dry out
everybody's
as
saying no.
quickly. If it's shallow, it's gonna dry out a heck of a lot quicker, especially if you get days like today. Whereas you get a little bit more soil in there, you're adding a little bit extra moisture, your root systems are growing down a little further and tapping into what's down.
like, the top dries out quicker, right?
Yes.
Than the bottom, yeah. By the way, the people that are gonna choose the raised bed are probably not gonna have as hardy vegetables growing as the people who are gonna choose to put it in the ground. I gotta believe that. I mean,
All about fertility.
yeah. I'm just saying, if I was gonna go real nuts, I'd get a 10x20 and not worry about a raised bed and not getting dirty. I don't know.
What was the motivation for recommending raised beds?
Came from Yukon.
I think just that survey, we had quite a bit of.
Yeah, that's part of the Yukon survey.
I
Inquiry.
imagine, I'm not a gardener, but
Yeah, I don't know.
I imagine you have a raised beds for people who,
Aren't gardeners?
Limited mobility.
yeah,
That's me.
right? You know, who
Yeah.
are-
Not even I would stand up at and have
don't
it.
want a big, plot to
Yeah.
take care of.
Right, they didn't want something so big.
Yeah, something
And/or
manageable.
Or taking
physically
up room.
No, when
disabilities.
you're planting beans or something, you don't wanna be sitting there on the ground and picking, you know?
Oh,
You
that's
got a
true.
nice little raised bed, you got a little patch of beans over here, and sit in
Weeding
your
is
lawn
easier.
chair and picking your beans, getting your dinner ready.
Much easier.
Is that what you guys do?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
I couldn't do that.
All right, so we're back to, we got the 3 feet by 8 feet, but what's the depth of them? And are they gonna be off the ground or on the
Planting
ground?
depth, right? The
Correct,
planting
yes,
depth.
yeah, planting depth.
Just
You don't think 24 inches is enough?
It's not
I,
bad,
I don't know if
Planting depth.
yeah,
that's
better than,
Well, it's
better
not
gonna
than
be a lot of
16.
soil, a lot of weight when it gets wet and saturated.
Well,
and
don't forget, it's probably gonna be 20 inches deep. But,
Yeah,
you know,
but
you're
just,
gonna be 4 inches, you're not up to the
It
top.
could be just the difference between a 5/4 and a 2x4, you know what I'm saying? The bracing and stuff like that. Last thing we want to do is build this thing, have it that deep, and it go
Right.
collapse on you.
Exactly.
So, I'm looking at tried and true plans here. I'm assuming they're tried and true plans, I should say, is what's being sold on the market.
Why don't we look at those plans,
Yeah.
and we could talk
So,
about it next
I
time,
mean, why don't we
a
say
little more
this?
particulars.
We're looking at putting those kind of things, the actual raised beds, like Sabrina said, she's got volunteers do. We're showing them on the periphery. We'll just
Right.
show them on the periphery and come up with a design.
That's good.
It's,
So they'll be 3 feet by 8 feet.
Yeah,
For
the
now.
size, so.
yeah.
I think
The
you gotta
depth,
go
we'll
3
figure it
by
out.
8, yeah.
We'll figure it out later. And he's gonna design 15 by 15 garden plots and 10 by 20.
We'll show both kinds
Right.
and what it looks like, how it lays out.
That'll be good.
we're gonna do 15.
We're gonna look at 15 by 15, and we're gonna look at 10 by 20.
Diameter of a regular plot, and then 10 by 20s.
So you're somewhere around 200 square feet per plot, 200 to 225. Because the average, they said that good size is 100 to 300, so it's right in the middle.
Yeah,
right.
sounds good. And we'll see that design at our next meeting, so we'll see, which one we want. All right, anything else on community gardens?
I don't have anything, do you?
No.
No.
Okay, can I have a motion for executive session, negotiation strategy, potential land acquisition with town manager and the district, our director of community development?
I make a motion to go to executive session.
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Okay, we came out of executive session, and is there any other business?
No.
No other business? Take a
I make
motion
a
to
motion
adjourn.
to adjourn.
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody.